السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: من صام رمضان ثم أتبعه 6 من شوال كان كصيام الدهر. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us numerous blessings, from our health to our wealth to our friends and our family. And the single greatest blessing that He has given us, all of us here, is the blessing of Iman and Islam. And it was through His fadl that we were able to witness the single greatest month out of the year, the month of Ramadan. We were able to maximize our time through that, in that month. And we were able to see and witness within ourselves the potential that we have and the potential our community has. And when we think about all of the deeds that we've done in the month of Ramadan, we come to an actualization that some of us, and sometimes the amount of deeds that I do in the month of Ramadan, I don't even do that entire amount in the entire year. Those amount of deeds the entire year, the rest of the 11 months. Yes, there is a blessing of Ramadan. Yes, the shayateen being locked up. Yes, there is many things. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did show us that we have the capability to perform X amount of actions in the month of Ramadan. And our actions are varied, whether they be reciting Quran or listening to a talk or praying Taraweeh or fasting. I mean, it's amazing how many deeds that we could do while in a state of fasting. And now we're in the month of Shawwal. So as a Muslim mindset, we don't just think, I only think from Ramadan, this Ramadan, and then I wake up again next Ramadan. That's not how our mindset works. That's not how our Muslim mindset needs to be. So there are certain actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed and sprinkled throughout the year as well. And being the month of Shawwal, one of those many actions that's mentioned in hadith, and I'll just briefly talk about this because it doesn't apply to every single individual. But those of us that are able to fast, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever fasts the month of Ramadan then follows it up by fasting 6 more days of Shawwal, they get the reward of fasting the entire year. Fasting the entire year just by adding 6 more days in Shawwal. And we know that we can do it. Those of us that are healthy, mashallah, and we're able to fast in the month of Ramadan, we know that we are able to fast. It's just, are we going to put our mind to it and stick out another 6 days to get the reward for the entire year? And the reward has been mentioned. That's from the Sunnah. We know that we will get that reward. And the ulama have tried to, come up with a way of how does it equal a year. So if we look at the ayat, and when we look at ayahs and a hadith in the Sharia, we don't just look at them one at a time. Just look at this one hadith and just look at this one ayah, just look at this one hadith. And we look at it as a whole. So when we look at the Quran as a whole, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that مَنْ جَاءَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ فَلَهُ عَشْرُ أَمْثَالِهَا. Whoever does one good deed, it's rewarded tenfold. So if we multiply your days of Ramadan by 10, well, that will more or less equal 10 months. And then you multiply these 6 days of Shawwal by 10, more or less equals 2 months. So that's how you get your 1 year of reward. Whether you want to think of it like that, it doesn't matter. You still get the reward of 1 year, as been promised by the Prophet ﷺ in hadith. And the beauty of our nafil ibadah and our sunnah ibadah, our non-fard and non-wajib ibadat, the beauty of those is that it covers up any deficiencies we might have in our obligatory ibadat. Now, whether it's salah or fasting, it covers up those deficiencies. For example, we might be praying our fard salah and we might be thinking of so-and-so X amount of businesses or so-and-so game or whatever. But we followed it up before and after we pray our sunnahs. So they cover up those deficiencies that we might have had in our fard salah. And people always ask, I was just asked this question yesterday as well, that do I have to fast these 6 days of Shawwal all together? No, that's not the case. Any of the days of Shawwal will be fine. You can break it up by twos or one at a time, however you want to do it. Just try to make sure it's in the month of Shawwal. No. So that's the main aspect of that. And it's truly a blessing, right? We always think about all the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and it truly is a blessing that He has placed Shawwal right after the month of Ramadan, because we are mentally, emotionally, physically prepared already and ready to go in terms of fasting. So adding another 6 days, doesn't seem too hard for us to attain. And that's just one of the ibadah. That's one of the ibadahs that we are able to do in this blessed month of Shawwal as well. But it's not the only one. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about the whole khutbah about fasting 6 days of Shawwal. That's a piece of the pie. However, one of the main aspects of Ramadan is connecting with the Quran. And in that month of Ramadan, we were able to connect with it on another level. Be it reading, be it listening to, or understanding, or sitting in tafsir talks, whatever the case may be. These actions, they are not just strictly associated with Ramadan. Yes, we know that we might not be able to take the same days off as we did in Ramadan. We might not be able to fast every single day, but it's not all or nothing. I'm going to fast and do everything, go all out 100% in Ramadan, and then the rest of the year I'm just going to chill, relax, not do anything. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Your iman is going to be an iman rush, and it's just going to crash. Just going to crash. You have to have little spurts throughout the year as well. That's why there's a famous saying that خَيْرُ الْأَعْمَالِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلْ, that the best of deeds are those deeds that are consistent, even if they're small. Because consistency throughout the year, that's going to have an impact on your ruh. That's going to have an impact on your iman, and it's going to allow it to increase and increase. And this Quran, it's a beautiful thing that in every aspect of it, in whatever way we can get associated with it, it's going to increase our iman. That's why Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he states in the hadith that's famously stated by the khatibs in the khutbah, that inna ahsan al-hadithi kitabullah, that the best of speech is the Quran, is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa ahsan al-hadi, hadi Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the most beautiful of guidance is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So this combination, this duo it cannot be beat, of recitation of the Quran and connecting yourself with the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we can hear and listen to tons and tons of ahadith that talk about the benefits of recitation of the Quran, or listening to the Quran, or understanding the Quran. And it applies at every single level. Whether we're professionals who work in the corporate world, whether we're 5-year-old kids, whether we're PhD students, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to connect with the Quran at our own level. And it's for that reason, Prophet ﷺ, he said that man qara harfan min kitabillah falahu hasana wal hasanatu bi ashri amthaliha, that whoever recites one letter of the Quran, then he gets a good deed. He says, لا أقول ألف لام ميم حرف ولكن ألف حرف ولام حرف وميم حرف. He said, every single letter that you recite of the Quran, you get the reward of one good deed, and every good deed is multiplied by 10. He didn't say alif lam mim is one harf. He said alif is one harf, lam is one harf, mim is one harf. That's the beauty of the Quran, that we can connect with it. The kids, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, can connect with it just by reciting the Quran. Now, I'm not going to say that that's the only level of connection that you can get with the Quran. Because as Muslims, we always look, how can I do better? How can I do more? وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. How can I increase my knowledge? How is that possible for me to continue my path in knowledge? Every time in the corporate world, we're always trying to get up on that ladder. What's the next position that's available? Let me apply for that position. Let me look for other jobs that might get a higher pay or a higher position. We're always looking at that. We have that mindset. So more importantly, that mindset needs to be applied with our deen and our Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Because if we have that mindset, then inshallah in the hereafter it will be said to us as well that يقال لصاحب القرآن اقرأ وارتقي ورتل كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا. That is going to be said to that individual who had that mindset. That they had that connection with the Quran. It's going to be said that read, recite and rise up. Recite and rise up in rank. Because the last ayah that you recite, that's going to be your rank in Jannah. That's going to be your rank. We talk about elevating ourselves in terms of the dunya. Yes, go ahead, mashallah, go do that. I'm not saying don't do that. But also elevate yourself in the akhirah as well by connecting with the Quran. That is what's going to elevate you. That is what's going to elevate all of us. And we can't be on two extremes of the spectrum where you have one individual who says that, only thinks that, the Quran is just to be recited, not to be understood. So I'm just going to sit here and recite it and not going to even think about, ponder over the meaning or even try to understand it. Now that's one extreme. You're reciting it, that's good. That's good, mashallah. That's good. You're reciting it. You're getting a reward for it. We just read a hadith about that. Yeah, we just heard a hadith about that. Now you get 10 deeds for every single letter. That's great, mashallah. And you have the other side of the spectrum who assumes that they can just pick up the Quran and understand it without any expertise. Without any expertise, let me just pick it up and this ayah looks like it's applying to this situation here. Let me just apply it here. This ayah, let me just apply it to this hukum. This sounds good, right? We don't do that with your medical textbook. Let me just open it up. Okay. We tried that, all of us tried that, maybe WebMD, our symptoms, and that doesn't usually turn out good, right? It doesn't turn out good. I'm saying that because I tried that myself. It didn't turn out too good. So how can we possibly think about trying that with the Quran? That's a joke, right? It's a joke. We're smiling, but that's not funny, right? If we do that with the Quran, that's that's a disrespect to all the absolute scholarship that has been placed for the past 1400 years. Absolute disrespect. And forget about people, it's a disrespect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His kalam. I'm not saying that you don't ever open it up. You open it up. You read it. But then there's going to be times where you're not going to understand. Or you think you understand, but you need to confirm that understanding. Because this is a thought in your mind. And just because it sounds good in your mind doesn't mean that it's correct in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what is intended by in the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And same happened with the Sahaba. Right? They would think that this was the tafsir of so-and-so verse, and they would confirm it with the Prophet ﷺ, and sometimes they were right, sometimes they weren't. If that's the case for the Sahaba, who are we? Who are we? No. So we can't be on both sides of the extremes. I think it's sufficient for us to read the Quran. That's one extreme. Other extreme is just we don't need any type of expertise to just pick it up and be able to do the tafsir or be able to give any interpretation of the verses. Those are two major extremes that we see. Because the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ, he says that the Quran is going to be an intercessor for that individual who associates himself with it, who reads it, who recites it, who understands it. That's why you always see the famous hadith that what's the hadith? خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. The best of you are those who learn the Quran and then teach it. You can't teach something if you just don't even know it. And learning doesn't just mean learning how to recite. Learning means you know the tajweed rules, you know how to recite, you know when and where it applies. That's why I believe it was during the time of Ali radiallahu anh, there was an individual who had a high position. And Ali radiallahu anh asked him, do you know those verses that are nasikh and mansukh? Those verses that are the abrogator verses and those verses that are abrogated? He said, no. Oh. He said, oh, you're misguided and you're misguiding everybody else. Yeah, you yourself are misguided and you're just misguiding everybody else. So it's not just sufficient to say that we have, mashallah, so-and-so position, but that's a responsibility. What are we doing with that position, whether it's an imam or Quran teacher or whatever the case may be? Even if we're doing any type of halaqah in the masjid, what type of qualifications do we might have for that? I have 2 minutes, so we got some kids here. I wanted to say one little funny story, hopefully. I don't know if it's funny. We'll see. I'll let the kids decide if it's funny. So there was a woman who was trying to get married. And she had these 3 conditions. The conditions were that the husband has to recite the Quran, the whole Quran, every single day. Number 1. Number 2, that he has to fast the entire year. And number 3, that he has to pray tahajjud all throughout the night. Okay. So I'm going to shorten it real quick. Many offers, but then it got boiled down to one person. One person said, I can do that. I can do it. So mashallah, Imam Sahib gets him married. He's excited, mashallah, she's excited. A week goes by. This guy, he's barely praying Isha Salah. He's barely praying, his 5 daily Salahs. Fasting. I haven't seen him fast much. Tahajjud, I didn't really see him do that either. So what's going on with this individual? He's talking about reciting Quran the whole day. I didn't see that either. So they brought him in front of the judge, and the judge asked, what's going on here? You said you were going to fulfill these conditions of the marriage, and your spouse, mashallah, is saying that you didn't fulfill any of them. So he said, no, I did. Yeah, I fulfilled these conditions. So all right, let's take them one by one. Let's give him a chance. Okay, the first condition was that you were going to recite the Quran every single day. He said, yeah, I'm doing that. He said, you are? He said, yeah. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man qara'a qulu Allah wahad, فَكَأَنَّمَا قَرَأَ ثُلُثُ الْقُرْآنِ, that whoever recites qulu Allah wahad, Surah Ikhlas, it's as if he recited 1/3 of the Quran. So mashallah, recite qulu Allah wahad 3 times a day. Hey, there you go. So that's one aspect of that's one condition taken care of. Number 2 was, praying tahajjud all night. I see you, mashallah, sleeping all night. So how is that condition being fulfilled? Yes, Prophet ﷺ talked about praying Salat al-Isha in Jama'ah. You get half the reward praying half the night, right? And then if you pray Salat al-Fajr in Jama'ah, then you get the reward of praying the other half of the night. So mashallah, I've been praying Salat al-Fajr and Salat al-Isha and Jama'ah, so that condition is taken care of. Mashallah, give me pat yourself on the back, right? That's good too. That's good as well. He said, okay, fine. 2 for 2. Last one is fasting the entire year. You should know this one, right? You already know this one. He said, yeah, mashallah, I fasted the month of Ramadan, then I followed up by fasting 6 more days in Shawwal. So mashallah, as the Prophet ﷺ said, فَكَأَنَّمَا, as if he fasted the entire year. As if he fasted the entire year. So mashallah, the judge looked at him. All right, I'm leaving, I have to go. He said, I had to go. So inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if we're able to, that He allows us to fast 6 days of Shawwal, just how He did in the month of Ramadan. And He allows us to connect with the Quran just as we did in the month of Quran, and keep some type of consistency, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi.